I don't expect that. Thank you. So good evening, everybody. My name is Lisa Hewitt Dick. I'm a member of the Harbor Committee, and I'm also a member of this new working group, the governance subcommittee of the Harbor Committee, which has been charged by the selectmen to do certain things. And, you know, after everyone introduces themselves, we'll go through a quick, you know, recantation of what we do. Debbie, I'm going to throw it to you.
I believe I'm an at-large member of the group. I've lived in Cohasset since 1980. I'm an attorney by training, and I am currently the president of the Cohasset Conservation Trust, which among other places owns a large chunk of Bassing Beach, and have served in other capacities with the town as a volunteer.
Bob?
Oh, me?
Yeah, why don't you say, introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, I'm not, okay. Yeah, I'm Barbara Canny. I'm on the Harbor Committee, and now I'm on Waterways Committee. I've been here in town since 1993. And I've done lots of volunteer work with other places like in Cohasset, Senior Center, and also other things. Okay.
This is officially the governance subcommittee, but one of the things that we're going to look at is
Oh, okay.
Waterways Commission.
Right.
David?
David Farag. I've lived in town here for pretty much most of my life. I grew up here, went to high school here. I'm an attorney by trade. I used to be a private attorney. Now I work for the state. And I was on the Conservation Commission in Cohasset for over 10 or 12 years and was the chairman of it, and a number of other committees in town. And I also help out in town on a few other nonprofits.
Oh, yeah.
Cassandra?
I'm Cassandra. I'm the assistant town planner for Cohasset, newly appointed, and happy to be here.
Amy?
I'm Amy Questle, KP Law, and we serve as town council for the town of Cohasset.
And since it's this, Mr. Sinkowski, want to say hello?
Hi, David Sinkowski. I'm a Situate resident, member of the Situate Waterways Committee.
Great. We may be speaking to you a lot, David, once at some of the other pieces of our charge. So
Okay.
thank you all. I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda. Introduction of members, review of the Cohasset Select Board approved charge of the working group. And I may just see if we can I know you all have a copy of that. I'm just going to wait because it's pretty detailed. So I don't know if you want to spend the time going through the whole thing this evening. The third oh my God, I didn't edit this agenda. There's 2 threes here. Discuss with town council the draft of an IMA with the town of Situate, discuss the development of a shellfish bylaw for Cohasset, and finally discuss meeting schedule to optimize attendance and public accessibility to our work. So I think so that we can use a valuable time of Amy. Amy, I was wondering if you could just kind of give us a broad sketch of some of your thoughts on one of our biggest charges and something that the town manager asked us to focus on, which is the IMA.
Sure. So thank you, Madam Chair. So essentially, there's 2 special acts. One is in 1912, the other one is in 1953, which gives the town of Cohasset powers over waterways, which is technically in the town of Situate. So while I think that those acts were obviously they were enacted for a reason. You know, none of us were around to know the exact reason, but mainly I think those acts were enacted because of geography. And the way that the town line is, you know, we have the harbor, and then, you know, we have Situate. The harbor is almost exclusively, you know, used by Cohasset, not necessarily Situate. And so, so we have this interesting property line We also have these two acts, which, give us some police power, particularly the harbor master. And, I think that even if we didn't have these two acts, the harbor master would have quite a bit of police power anyway, pursuant to 90B and pursuant to Chapter 91. But we do have these two specific acts. And so, what we would like to do is enter into or consider entering into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Situate regarding some of the things that need to be done to protect the harbor and to keep the harbor, working efficiently for recreational boating, things like that. And so we have now, I will say that, so KP Law represents approximately 1/3 of the Commonwealth as town or Situate or city solicitor, and special counsel to, if you add special counsel onto that, we represent maybe close to 2/3 of the Commonwealth. And I have not been able to locate a intermunicipal agreement between, between two towns that kind of share a harbor. And so we would be looking at, something kind of, something new. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think that gives both towns, the ability to determine what's necessary, what needs to be in this intermunicipal agreement.
And can I just for one quick second, I
Yes.
just the language from the charge, which was adopted on this matter. And the charge is to research and document the pros and cons to be considered in the creation of an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Situate in order to formalize communication and to ensure coordination of policies that affect the entire operation of the health and safety of the Cohasset Harbor. Said agreement could include management of Bassing Beach, public safety operations within the Cohasset Harbor on both sides of the town and county line, and maintenance and repair of shared infrastructure and storm water management. So that'll just kind of give us a sense of what the
Right.
select what we're talking about.
Excuse me, can I
Right.
just interrupt for 1 second? Lisa, did you send something out that you're reading from? I have nothing.
Yeah, I sent the charge a while ago, Bob, but I can send it again to you.
Okay.
Lisa,
sorry,
that's a little different than the original charge that I got from you. The language is different. Could you maybe resend whatever you're?
Yeah, I
operating?
will. Something, I may have been just reading from something that was the red line version, so someone may have cleaned it up a little bit more, but I will send it out.
Okay, I have something a little shorter and different.
You're probably shorter, yeah. Thank you. Amy, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, so essentially that is actually what we're looking at, and what we're looking to do. I guess I would suggest that the first thing that this committee does is to determine what are the important aspects that we want to see in the IMA. What is important to the town of Cohasset, and then perhaps even ranking what is important, or grouping what is important, group A, or these are the things that we have to have, group B, these are the things we'd like to see, group C, these would be great, but we'll see. And then obviously we would have to then, approach the town of Situate and, to see where they are, what their position is on an IMA. I think that I'm probably partial, but I think that any IMA will benefit the town of Situate, simply because of the geographic property line. It appears that any IMA, it appears that Cohasset will most likely be covering quite a bit, because that is where, Bassing Beach and the harbor master jurisdiction, because of these special acts, the harbor master already has jurisdiction in these areas. So I think that I think it probably would benefit Situate, but again, that would be up to them, whether it benefits them.
And Amy, in your experience, is this just something, okay, so we come up with a draft and then we just call the selectmen over there, or would we reach out to the Waterways Commission, you know, the,
Right, so, so I think that would probably be something that, that either myself and, or probably myself and Chris would, together figure out, I'm sure, he can talk to Jim over in, the town administrator over in Situate, Mr. Boudreau, and, find out who who we should reach out to, and, how we should reach out and things like that. And who they are going to designate to move this IMA along. And that is 100% up to them, whether it's their select board, whether it's Waterways, whether it's a subcommittee that they create, that would definitely be up to them, 100% up to them.
so
And
thoughts?
if they do not designate anyone, it would be the select board.
Right. So, Lori, do you have any, Harbor Master, do you have any thoughts?
No, not really at this time.
Okay, I know, Amy, last time we met, we talked about trying to get, a template from some other town to get some good language.
Not possible.
Yeah, but Debbie or David or Barbara, do you have any thoughts of, what you think would make sense to include?
Well, I think I mentioned before that, I think some level of research into issues that arise with
Right.
regard to the harbor, either from a police point of view, a fire point of view, harbor master point of view, whoever has been involved with, operating under these special acts to address issues over time, to talk to them a little bit and see what are the issues that arise most frequently and how's it going? How's it working?
Right.
Are there things that aren't working well? Are there things that are working well? Are there things where they need more support or a different kind of support? Are there groups that need to work together that aren't working together right now? But I think it would be, because, we're already operating under some level of legal oversight under these special acts. And, certainly as just a private citizen, I haven't heard any major disasters happening over the last several years, but I'm sure things happen and are dealt with. And it'd be good to know whether the people dealing with those things feel that changes need to be made or some things are working well, and whether we just, put in writing that something's working well, operating in a certain fashion, or recommend a change in the way things are dealt with. I think that would be a good research to do.
Right. The special acts, I'm not sure if I think I've seen both of them, Amy, but could you send those out to us or? send them out to-
Yes,
send them out to
yes,
us?
I can. I'm
Yeah.
almost positive I have them electronically.
Yeah.
But yes, I can get them to you.
My memory was through an early discussion of the Harbor Committee, that one was just giving jurisdiction, almost legal proceeding jurisdiction to a different county because of the strange thing that, that the fact that Cohasset is in Norfolk and not in Plymouth, and it didn't really make sense. I think it was, if it had to have a, two county, administration.
Had we looked at Kingston, Duxbury, Plymouth area?
So yes, so we represent Duxbury, we represent Plymouth, we represent Harwich, we represent Brewster. These are just towns that share waterways, share harbors. We
Yeah.
also represent Rockport. They share somewhat with Gloucester.
Yeah.
We represent Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, and Eastham. And I serve as special waterway. I serve as special counsel for waterways for Chatham. We just
Nothing, huh?
So it sounds like we don't have resources here to study. Oh my
but
God.
I will
Are they
say,
still friends?
I will say that that this is unusual. this is an unusual.
Yeah, it goes right down the middle. Well, not the
Yep,
middle.
yep. And the different counties makes it, even more,
Yeah.
distinct. This is obviously the only one that I've ever seen, 2 different counties.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
this- I suppose if we're going to be the first, and I think many of you know this, that, and I'm looking out from my study window at it right now, that the line between Cohasset and Situate was originally the, ancient colonial line between the two what were they, villages, or, the Mass Bay and versus the other group. David, you probably remember this. And it was the first time that there was a controversy in the 1600s around hay, salt hay.
Oh, yeah.
From the field, and because it's very valuable. And it was the first time that two, we'll call them America now, but American colonists decided a land dispute between themselves, rather than going back to the British government to have them resolve it. So it's kind of, so this will be the first time we have an IMA between the same.
Right. So just as a summary, you are correct, Lisa, that the 1912 Special Act allows a police power. It allows Cohasset, it gives Cohasset a police power over that area of Situate, which is, it's basically, they actually define it, which it's the westerly banks of Bailey's Creek, and they do, the whole thing, it runs to a bound and all this stuff, Briggs Harbor. And so basically what it says is that that area that is in Plymouth County, that is in Situate, it gives the ability of a Cohasset police power to go in and, arrest or do whatever. And those people have to go to Norfolk, Norfolk, not Plymouth court. And that actually, if you really think about it, that's actually really that's necessary, because you can't really have a Norfolk officer go in and arrest somebody and then they're prosecuted somewhere else. So anyway, but that's just as an aside. But
So they do have to go to Norfolk, did you say?
They do. They are. So even if they're arrested in Situate in this certain area, in this area, they go to Norfolk. With the, and that's where the arresting officer would also prosecute them. And then Chapter 54 that's Chapter 54 of the Acts of 1953. That's the one that actually it allows the inhabitants of the town of Cohasset to have jurisdiction and over this area, and it provides that they may by bylaw provide for the regulation and enforcement of rules and regulations for the operation of and limiting to the speed of motorboats in Cohasset Harbor and Cove within territorial limitations of the Commonwealth. And then it goes on to say that it also allows for to regulate the mooring and anchoring of boats, lobster cars, or floats therein. And so it's basically, that there can be, the town of Cohasset can enact a bylaw with rules and regulations in the harbor to it's basically for safety. It's safety of the public, or it's detrimental or injurious value of property therein, congestion of the harbor, things like that. So that's really the one that kind of gives the town some kind of enforcement over that area.
What does that do with the outer harbor area? Bailey's Creek and
that covers that. So yes. So yes, it's within let me see the inhabitants. Let me find where it is. It is I'm sorry, where these things are so hard to find.
The handwriting is.
The immediate, the inhabitants of the town provided regulations Operation limiting speed of motorboats in Cohasset Harbor. That's where it is. It's Cohasset Harbor and the Cove, and that is where
That's where the
within
marina
the
is.
territorial limits of the Commonwealth. And that's where that's defined in the 1912 Act. And the
Okay,
1912 Act, that's the one that provides the actual limits, where it says that, standing on the westerly banks of Bailey's Creek, thence running to the same direction to the center of said creek, easterly. I'm not gonna read, it's
That's okay.
like, it's a page
So
long.
did it have to do with the fishing and the lobstermen and stuff, so.
It's really, honestly, I read the 1953 Act as safety. It's basically for safety purposes.
Yeah,
And it allowed, for safety purposes to, it doesn't prohibit recreation, doesn't
Mhm.
prohibit, any kind of recreational thing. It's basically to be able to regulate that area, to provide, to make it safe for,
Mhm.
for recreation. So
okay.
David, do you have any thoughts?
No, it would be, I'm just trying to look at the charge to see some of the things that might be involved with it. Because I think there's going to be, we don't know how much, but I mean, as there's a lot of development coming on Cohasset Harbor in different ways, I think there's an expectation that it might get busier as time goes on. Because I mean, it's been very, almost frozen in time there during the COVID time and even before that. So I think with everything going on there is that asking the police, the fire department, what current issues they have out there, and the harbor master as well, and then also have an expectation of what increased activity might do in the future as well.
Yeah, I think perhaps the next meeting, maybe we invite people to come and talk to us, the police and fire and obviously Laurie and others. And I know in my understanding is that there was a huge increase in boaters, because of COVID, everyone got a boat, which was great, but the same token, I think it's probably caused a lot more
It's jam-packed.
questions and issues of safety, that Laurie's had to deal with. Additionally, I think one of the hopes is, there's a lot of concern about the breakwater, and who owns it, who owns the actual, is it the feds, is it Situate, is it, it's obviously Situate land, and what regulates it, would we be able to, discuss doing something with it for safety purposes, for resilience purposes. So there's a lot of those issues that I think have bumbled.
Yeah, I think that was the other thing is on it. We talked about stormwater management and any shared infrastructure. They might be two different things in a lot of cases, but is what is the the different infrastructures that might be in the Cohasset side or the Situate side, and to just at a minimum at least itemize those so that in the future, if there's looking for funding for those projects or whatever, if they ever
Right.
come up, then we know, but both sides know what's going on with it.
Yeah,
Because I'm trying to think of what other infrastructure there might be other than the break wall, as you're saying, out there.
Yeah. I can't really think of much. I suppose, and there's a lot of, it is, most of it's privately owned or nonprofit owned, the entire.
Lori said something.
Sorry, Lori?
Lori might have said something. No?
I
No,
don't.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I'm
It's funny
sorry.
because.
I just saw it flash.
Yeah, it lightens up when you have. So, perhaps then, and Debbie, forgive me with that, we didn't do that sort of in the interim since our last meeting, we didn't really do that focus, questionnaire to people. I know, I think that Tim may have sent something, Tim Davis, the chair of the Harbor Committee, may have asked, so the police, what sort of occurrences, but it's I still in my mind need to understand, the jurisdiction. I know recently there was, for the first time we were seeing police boats down at the harbor. So maybe that's one of the questions we have to kind of distill to, what jurisdiction is what. And, we can look to you, Amy, for some help on that going forward. So I agree with you. We should just distill the issues, and maybe, and as Debbie said, the way to figure out the issues is to do some survey research and conversations and perhaps invite individuals, to come and tell us. We've had some great programs out of the Harbor Committee. We're having the Resiliency 3-part series on the actual environmental impacts. I think this is more the public safety and services impact, that we need to investigate.
Mhm.
So on the breakwater, do we have any idea who constructed it?
There appears to be that the federal government did something after the blizzard of 78. I'm not sure originally.
Okay.
Laura, you're probably the subject matter expert on that.
Who?
Laurie.
Sorry.
After the blizzard of 78, the town got funding from the feds
Okay.
to make the repairs to
Yes.
the seawall.
Okay, that makes
is
sense.
that-
It looks like an Army Corps project. So makes sense.
Debbie, have you ever come across any reference to that in your?
I don't think so. I forget if that was raised as an issue during the dredging project.
Yeah.
It might have come up and I can't remember whether it was relevant to that or.
Right. I know Tim and others, myself and a couple other people have tried to do some research on it, but it's kind of a an orphan, even though owned by everybody, but an orphan is where it's from. And but that's one of the things I think has been a part of a discussion. Should it be raised? Should it be raised? Does it make a difference to raise it? I mean, those sort of questions. But I think first and foremost, I like Debbie's idea of inviting to our next meeting, individuals to talk about some of the public safety and access issues.
Yeah.
So is our purpose here to redefine? What is our main purpose here? Do you know what I mean? Are we redefining what 1953 Act was, or I'm sorry, you guys, I'm not an attorney. You are all attorneys. I feel so-
Congratulations.
Oh my God.
No, I think that the only brought up the acts is because the acts do provide for Cohasset existence in that area, and there some oversight of that area, but no, I think with regard to an IMA, an IMA is an agreement between the two towns. So it just I think that the two acts help by saying, listen, we already have our fingers in this area, but the IMA will cover, as far as I understand, the IMA will cover way more than just being able to pull people over for speeding in that area. So, for example, such as the breakwater and, maintenance of it, things that you wouldn't even think about, for example, applying for grants. So, how can we apply for a grant to to maintain or fix the breakwater when it's not even in our jurisdiction? So
Right,
that's when
right.
any grant application would have the IMA, attached to it saying that, yes, we can apply for the grant.
I
Things like that.
Yeah.
I foresee it encompassing quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything
Thank you.
interesting in the paperwork for the repairs that were made after the blizzard,
Yeah.
because obviously it appears they gave money to Cohasset to do work
Right.
on the breakwater. Maybe it came up as an issue and maybe
Right.
something relevant was said.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Laurie, I don't know if there's any, I know, you had some documents on that. So what would that have been? Probably 1978, probably the money came through in 80 or something, probably.
The town got a Chapter 91 license for the repairs
Okay.
to the breakwater from Massachusetts in I'm just looking at the date. It was recorded on December 21st, 1979. It was issued on the 21st of November, 1979. Chapter 91 license for Cohasset in the county of Norfolk, applied to Department of Environmental Quality Engineering for a license to reconstruct a stone breakwater damaged during the storm of February 6, 1978 in Cohasset Harbor in the town of Cohasset. So right here, they're saying that this thing is in the town of Cohasset in Cohasset Harbor. And I think the work was done in 79 or 80. I forget. I think I have more information at my house.
Yeah, anything that, can dig out of your
research.
trove of great materials would be great.
Because they were trucking the stones out to the breakwater on a barge. They would put the dump truck right on the barge and push it out to the breakwater from land. And one of the dump trucks, wasn't properly loaded or something, and the barge and truck tipped over in the middle of the harbor.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so terrible.
Of course, nothing goes right in Cohasset.
That
Oh,
just
God, we
happened
love
in
to-
Hingham Harbor. That just
did.
happened in Hingham Harbor.
It did. I saw that on the news.
Yeah. But I can't imagine, did it end up in the middle of the harbor? I'm sorry, Lori, I interrupted.
Yeah, it was right in the middle of the harbor.
Ouch.
And it caused all sorts of problems. And I think that was 1980, which would make sense,
Yeah,
according to this license that I have.
So a license like that I know the conditions now are pretty tough. Would an application had to be pretty detailed to get that license at the time? I mean, I know that's, 50 years ago, but
I think after the blizzard of 78, there was so much damage all
Yeah,
along the
I mean,
coast.
yeah, they were probably like, here you go, here you go, here you go, right?
Exactly. They were just rubber stamping stuff.
Yeah. Okay, but at least it gives us some context. And Laura, if I could steal copies of that for me to circulate to everybody, it might be kind of fun to see, especially if you have any photos of the truck.
There must be a Mariner article about it
Yeah, I was
somewhere.
gonna say, there must
Yeah.
be something in the Mariner that we can find on this. So Amy, in a sense of, are any sort of like checklist of things that you could, kind of help us, prompt us to think of things beyond just the obvious of public safety and issues? And something as obvious as the breakwater. I don't know if there's, I hate to depend on you too much, but I just think that would be helpful. And I know you found no other town that had a two-town, a marine agreement, but there must be other sort of issues that come up.
Correct. One of them is that one of the biggest ones that we see are the grant, who can apply for a grant. And then again, what applications, one town has to sign off on for the other town, meaning, so that's in the agreement, so, Situate, is required to sign off on a grant for us to fix, the breakwater, something like that. The other thing too is that we have, in this situation, I don't know what the erosion, if there's severe, any kind of erosion issues. But again, filing and, just simply filing a notice of intent. If we had to file a notice of intent, you have to have the property owner sign the notice of intent.
Yeah.
And so you can't, you can't file a notice of intent without the signature of the property owner. So, it's things like that that we want to make sure, are in there. The other thing is that, we want to hear from Situate as to what what they would be looking for.
Right.
And what we could agree, what they're looking for and what we could agree to, to help them. If there's anything that, what their concerns are, we'd have to also look at those. But generally, the IMA, I think, is mostly going to be a document that is going to outline the cooperation between the two towns, because we really don't have, we have the issue of, the harbor, but we have special acts that allow us to do certain things in that area. So, so we don't have to really worry about that. What we're more worried about is, this cooperation with regard to grants, with regard to permitting, things of that,
Okay.
like that.
One-
And then,
Yeah.
the other thing that always comes up, I think, in IMAs is, is the town, I don't even know if the town of Situate is receiving any kind of fees from Situate residents for this area, or are they receiving fees from Cohasset residents, from this area? I do know that, I know that, I don't know if it's still, I do not know if this still happens, but at one point, I know that the town of Situate sold beach permits for Hummerock to Marshfield residents that lived in that Hummerock area. So I don't know if there's beach permits that Situate sells to Cohasset. I don't know about that, but things like that we can also look into and see if maybe something can be done there.
One thing I want to bring up before I lose that thought is the only thing that I've seen where you've had multiple towns together is when I was on the Conservation Commission. We were finishing off the tidal dam down on West Corner, and so it involved the three towns, Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset. So even though there was no intermunicipal agreement, the project received federal and state funds and some other funds as well, and it had to be approved by all three conservation commissions because it affected the waterways for all three towns. So that's the only one that I can kind of scratch my head on, that where you had that all different towns overlapping with either infrastructure that would happen. So there might be helpful as we go down the road. But again, there was no agreement between the towns. It all the interests aligned, and then therefore it happened.
Right.
Yeah, and there's also between Situate and Marshfield, there's also dredging agreements for the South River.
Yeah.
So, and I did check with the Marshfield Harbor Master to find out if just because I know him, but to find out if there was any kind of agreement, and there wasn't. But again, they had to get permission from both conservation commissions.
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
Okay, so I think the next action step to finish out this at this point is to invite police, fire, and Lori to come and talk to us, at the next meeting, and just have a, to define the different issues that we, and perhaps just try to begin, a running tally of various issues that we made. And I will try to do a better job with these minutes this time, and sending them out and just to kind of define the issues. And one of the questions I suppose we want to know is an increase in need for a more public safety help. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the other thing that I just want to touch on tonight, because I know we're coming up, well, oh no, it's only 6:19. I'm worried about you, Cassandra. I want to get you to your next 3-hour
You
meeting.
have plenty of time. Plenty of time.
I know there is a want to create a shellfish bylaw. Amy, I don't know if anyone's talked to you about this yet. Cohasset does not have a shellfish bylaw. And I know, and I'm not clear on this, that I have to get more information about this. I believe that the town has appointed a shellfish
Constable, right?
constable.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what authority that gleans from. I don't know if that's just an appointment from the town manager, or if it's part of a bylaw, or, because obviously we want to make sure that any shellfish bylaw that we put together, is in alignment to the duties and responsibilities of the shellfish constable. So that's something that we need to look into. We also there was a draft that Tim Davis sent me, but it looked like it was from another town, and which is understandable, that I will circulate with everybody. But it's one of these things I think, Amy, we could use some help with, is like, what should go into a good shellfish bylaw?
Mhm.
And, also reach out to, our other towns like, Swin, and there was quite an extensive research project that I ran, that I kind of fell into by doing some mass.gov research searches, looking at all the different towns, that have this sort of bylaw. But some of them were very, very complicated, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the four corners of this should look like.
Okay. Yeah. So any information, any insight as to what you guys would like to see in the bylaw would be helpful, because you are correct there. So for example, my Cape towns, like Eastham, has a pretty in-depth shellfish bylaw. I think it's Duxbury. Duxbury has a pretty solid one. But yeah, so, once I find out exactly what you guys are looking for, we can put one together. That's not a problem. There are quite a few towns that have them.
Yeah, I mean, the one that was floating around was like 16 pages long, and I've got an extensive background in drafting, statutes and stuff. I'm thinking, okay, there's a lot here that I know nothing about. So I think we, once again, will need a lot of help to find out, because sometimes I think some bylaws and ordinances and statutes are more complicated than they have to be. But this is a part of the law that I know nothing.
Yeah, the word would be overkill. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and that happens when you can get to bylaws. I mean, it's got to fit what you're looking for, but you also want to see what's out there. What are the typical things that they're trying to regulate, and then you can strip it down from there and see what fits Cohasset.
Right. So I think we could use some guidance on that, Amy, and we could certainly. I will send around, the copy of these two acts. If you send them to me, Amy, I will send around in charge. And forgive me for reading from the earlier version, but I think you got the spirit of what we were talking about. The other question I have, because I don't know, I presume that this is any ordinance is a bylaw change, which has to go to, we have to have hearings on it probably, and probably not us, probably, maybe David, maybe you know more about the bylaw process in Cohasset.
I'm trying to think of when we did the stormwater one. That was like in 2008. I mean, that was a brand new bylaw that, there was no architecture at all. It was just a whole new line with a bylaw and then regulations that we would have to promulgate afterwards. I think it's just, it goes through the normal process, and just for a town meeting vote.
Adoption,
So,
right.
you have to go, advisory board, selectmen, all the ones
Right.
to get their looks at it. And then it gets posted, and it needs, I believe it was 2/3 at the town meeting for any new bylaw or bylaw change.
Right. I know
So,
there's a bylaw committee, but I asked one of the selectmen about it, and they said it's not really up and operational. But
yeah,
there's a lot of going on, and there's the master plan bylaw working group. So, maybe one of us could take that on to just at least figure out what the process is here, and for the next meeting, and go from there.
yeah. Because I mean, a lot of times, like with the bylaw committee, like you said, it's usually stagnant, but different areas of the town government can get federal or state regulations that they have to promulgate a new
Right.
bylaw for. And that was like with the stormwater one was from the federal one that you had to create as a town, or face all sorts of exciting penalties as time went on. So then whatever, it could be the planning board, it could be the Concom, it could be whichever one it is, they're gonna end up pushing it forward, for whoever shop it falls into. So that might, but I don't remember us going to the bylaw committee. I
Yeah.
remember we went through everyone else, but I don't remember them at all.
Okay. All right, well,
So normally, a general bylaw obviously has to go to town meeting. A general bylaw would be a majority vote, has to get approved by the Attorney General. However, I would have to look at your charter and your existing general bylaws to find out what additional steps have to be taken. For example, if you have to publish notice of, a public hearing, and if you have to go to there are towns that have bylaw review committees that you have to go to them first before it can get on the warrant.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the bylaw general language says.
Yeah.
It's in existence, but my understanding is that it's not really up and running at this point. Now, mind you, my guess would be that we come up with some recommendations and then we give it to, a sensitive committee. But we just have to figure that out. I don't want to be spinning wheels, and not knowing what the landscape is. We're an advisory committee, we're a recommendation committee. We're not a judicatory, thanks be to God, committee. I get enough of that in my own, my real job to do that. Okay, that would be helpful, Amy, if some input on that. Any other thoughts tonight? What I'd like to talk about a little bit is the schedule going forward. What people are comfortable doing and what people, it seems like we have a lot of research to do and a lot of, meetings to have. I'd like to get going a little bit more than we've been going. Obviously, there was like a 6-week break between the last couple of meetings because everyone was busy, et cetera. But it'd be nice to get to some, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, if everybody could handle that. I know everyone has busy lives, but it seems like if we could make some momentum, then I won't forget to send things out. We'll be in better shape. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good schedule, I think.
Yeah. Is this a good night? Is Tuesday nights good or?
Yeah.
Generally?
For me, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe what we could think of is, so let's see. Looking at the schedule. Cassandra, do you have any thoughts about all this?
In general or scheduling?
Just
Both, yeah.
For scheduling, yeah, I think just from experience, I think every 2 to 3 weeks seems to work for committees and working groups and whatnot. I will just say off the bat, looking in the upcoming weeks, I am out of the office from I think it's the 11th through whatever the Monday after the 20th is. So obviously I wouldn't advise scheduling a next meeting during that time. But anything after that would be fine. And in terms of everything else, I think everything that you've discussed is a good plan, particularly with getting conversations going with other people as well.
So I'm sorry. So how does while I was talking to you, I kind of zoned out and lost my page on the calendar here.
That's okay.
So that would. So I'm sorry. So the 10th, are you gone on the 10th? Is that what you're saying?
The 10th is Harbor Committee.
Oh, that's right.
So I wouldn't advise that either.
There's only so much Harbor Committee we can take.
Yeah, I wouldn't say do it that night.
Should we be wild and go like in
realistically, if you want to stick to Tuesdays, which is fine, the next available Tuesday that I have is the 24th.
That seems way out.
Because the 3rd is zoning board.
Yeah. Well, would anybody want to, just for this one time, meet like next week? But I don't know, that might be too short a notice to get people to, I mean, we could go another night. I mean, is there?
Well, the next week is the 3rd, which is zoning board.
Oh. If it's a Tuesday.
If it's a Tuesday,
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
If you wanted to do a different day of the week, we could obviously explore that. That's fine.
Anybody have any no-go nights? How exciting all
Depends on what week you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, we could try and slip one in and then go back to the Tuesday schedule after that, unless it's,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Why don't we do this? Why don't I look at the schedule and talk to Cassandra tomorrow morning and send out some dates, like, and give 3 options, for the next 2
Yep.
weeks, I think there's nothing worse than having 10 people looking at their the calendar and
Yeah.
figure it out. And then you realize you forgot your anniversary, or something. Okay. All right, so that's what we'll do. We'll send out.
and just the only thing in between now and the next meeting is definitely if we could get the statutes or whatever, or the acts of 1912 and 53 and get
Yep.
those so we can just put it in our packets that we get.
Yeah. So I'm gonna send the charge out again, the acts that, Amy, I may have them, but if you could send them to me, that would be great. I will,
Lisa, I am such a superstar. I just sent them to you.
oh my gosh,
So you're all set.
amazing.
You should have them.
It almost jumped out of my phone. The acts charges, and what was the other thing?
Lisa,
Oh, the bylaw, the Shellfish bylaw that had been, I'm sorry, Deb, go ahead.
you had, at the last meeting, you had mentioned that the the harbor master plan had recommendations in it that you thought we should look at.
Oh, yeah.
I
What
was
I'll do is
I was having
I'll send
trouble
you,
finding that on the town website. Can you?
okay,
maybe-
I'll send you that too.
Okay.
I'll send you the link because it's like a 58-page document.
1,000
It's
pages,
huge. It's huge.
We're trying to save the trees here.
Maybe you could alert us to what pages the recommendations are at. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. There's a lot of it is enunciated in the charge, because I did cut and paste when we were drafting it, but it does have some discussion about it.
Okay.
All right. So I think we have our plan ahead of us. I don't know, David or BK, any comments or questions?
Sure, thank you. So just so you know, regularly we attend meetings when we can or when we're notified. I've not been to a Cohasset meeting yet, but I've been to Marshfield, and Marshfield has attended Situate's. So to answer the question that came up earlier, I believe it was Debbie asked, has there been some problems or issues in the past in the jurisdiction and managing this area? And I'll just say that from the waterway side, I've been BK and it's never come up before. I've never heard of any issues. We don't have an agreement with Marshfield. Then the borders with Marshfield are much more extensive, covering the South River and the North River. We don't have the added complexity of 2 different Plymouth County and Norfolk County, so that's certainly something different. I'm taking my notes here. So the IMA is not yet complete, or is it started?
This is
Okay.
Tabula Rasa. We're sat down from a blank sheet of paper.
I was just going to suggest that then when you do start, when you think it's convenient, you could bring in someone from the waterways, and that way when you finally get to sending it to either Board of Selectmen, that it might better reflect the needs of both towns.
I think that's a great idea, David, and we really appreciate you coming tonight, and hopefully you'll, if we can get your email, we'll make sure that you get notice of future meetings. I think that would go a long way.
Great. And we meet every first Wednesday of the month. So
Yeah.
you're always welcome at the Situate Waterways meetings.
How have you found out, how long has the Waterways Commission been in existence?
10, 15 years more.
Mhm.
I've only been on it 4 years, but much longer than that.
Mhm. And you think it's as an entity, it's really helped in the,
Yeah, no, yes. So I believe it's a working, well-working machine, so. But it just like, all we do is make recommendations. We don't make decisions. We just,
right.
we study a problem and then we send it to the Board of Selectmen. This is a recommendation and goes from there.
Yeah, you got a pretty big, a lot of waterway. I mean, you've got miles and miles more than we do. Waterfront. Sure, big harbor. That's great. And by the way, you have I just had the luxury of going to the dedication of the Easter Rising the other Sunday, that the memorial that's on the harbor front. That's really quite something.
Great. Thank you.
All righty. Well, any other comments before we close out? Oh, hearing none. Thanks all.
Okay, thank you,
Look
Lisa.
for the email.
I
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Nice seeing
Thanks,
everyone.
Cassandra. Nice seeing you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.